Fresh from the showcase here, this is a little bit of social distancing. I'm doing each one of these videos alone because we just can't get everybody in the same camera, but we wanted to talk about pilots' watches this week and the salute to the Navy and the Air Force doing all the flyovers for our frontline healthcare workers. One of the things about pilots' watches is they're the opposite choice of the diver watch. A lot of people find the diver watch to be the best sport watch. Other people find the pilot's watch to be the best sports watch. The difference being that not all pilots' watches are 100% water resistant in a way where you can go swimming in them. This offering from IWC, the largest of the group, outside of the Navitimer. These are two polar opposites when it comes to water resistance value. You can actually swim in the IWC watch. It's water resistant up to 100 meters. It's got a screw down crown. It's a really amazing piece. This is a 46mm watch, and so is the Navitimer. And if you hold them side by side, they may not look the same case size, but in fact they are. The difference being the complicated nature of the Navitimer. So we're going to talk about the watches that we have sitting here. One of the watches that I have on my wrist is the Patek Pilot's watch, which is a 42mm piece. This is very unusual for Patek to make a timepiece in this size. It's made out of white gold. They also have a rose gold offering in this same piece. We happen to have it here. This is a $50,000 watch under normal circumstances. This watch is pristine and virtually unworn. We have it for just under $40,000 at this point. So these are some really great savings on some timepieces that you just can't find anywhere else at the moment. Something that's very important to the world, the GMT Rolex. This is the Batman. This watch was originally designed and developed for Pan Am pilots, and it was red and blue. So you hear it called the Pepsi, but actually it was the Pan Am colors that inspired the bezel ring on the original, and the black and blue Night series on this one just has a really neat color contrast. The difference being between the early and the late versions. The early models had painted bezels. These have ceramic bezels. This watch is another one with the screw down crown that's extraordinarily good under all swimming conditions, so you don't have to take this watch off at any specific time. The Cartier Santos Dumont, a Brazilian pilot in 1904, went to Cartier and needed to tell time in his aircraft. Truly, this is the original pilot's watch. Most people don't realize that this was the original wristwatch that was created for him, and it was an introduction to men wearing wristwatches because at that time, men only wore pocket watches. And the only way that people told time in the cockpit of an airplane, which as you can imagine was pretty rough in 1904, was with a pocket watch, and that just wasn't feasible when you were trying to keep those rickety old things flying. Now, the interesting thing about the Cartier is the way that the bracelet's put together. The screws along the bracelet and the way that the bracelet is designed is made to represent the shell, the outer shell of an aircraft, where the riveting would be. That would be the screws that sort of give you that hint of aircraft design. And this was a specialty piece that Santos Dumont was actively involved in. And interestingly, a lot of watches from South America, and we've talked about this before, South America and Brazil had a very large interest in the early 1900s in luxury watches. This is something that really kept Patek, like the one that I have on my wrist right now, in business throughout the hardest times of the world during the Depression. Moving on through the 1930s, 1940s, 1950s, you get into a complication that only Breitling offers. And I'm pulling the bezel ring off of this because this is an unworn model that we have in our group. We keep the plastic bezel rings on so that they protect the watch in our cases. This particular watch also has the plastic on it, so it is a unworn watch. The chronograph series on this watch is important to the world for pilots because this was one of the very first watches in the world to establish pushers that came from the middle center of the crown to the top of the case and ultimately to the bottom of the case. So you have your start-stop feature at the top and your reset feature at the bottom. It also has, and a lot of people don't realize, the crystal on this particular watch is attached to the actual bezel. So when you turn this bezel to do calculations which are on the inside of the chapter ring inside the watch, Pilots could use that chapter ring to make calculations as you turn that bezel back and forth. A lot of people don't realize that the crystal is actually attached to the bezel, and the crystal turns with the bezel. This is why I call this watch hydrophobic. It's scared to death of water. You do not want to get in the pool with this, or this watch will drown. One of the other things that makes this watch, this particular Navitimer, stand out is that it has the crystal case back so that you can see all the internal movements. This is a B01 series reference movement in this watch from Breitling, so it is a Breitling manufacturer movement. That's something that's very important to a lot of folks that collect Pilot's watches. They want the original manufacturer. Now, going back in Breitling's years, they had a 7750 based chronograph movement all the way up until 2009-2010 series, and that's when the B01 movement came into play. So a lot of really good history on these watches that come forward. Now, what's important about the Rolex Sky-Dweller, which we actually have in blue. We also have one in black. We're one of the few retailers that have pre-owned Sky-Dwellers. So this is a really interesting piece that you can find at SwissWatchExpo.com. And we want you to be able to look through all of our Pilot's watches and call us whenever you have any kind of questions about Pilot's watches, because they can be very complicated. The Sky-Dweller being one of them. The outer bezel ring turns to make certain different features happen within the Sky-Dweller, and I won't get into all of those features because we just don't have that kind of time. This is a whole video unto itself. But just know that this is a very complicated watch. It does have some really unique features. Once you learn how to use them, they're very easy to use. And it is a cool watch. The way that everything is put together in a mechanical watch to have this watch do the features that it performs is pretty amazing. It works a whole lot like the Yachtmaster. Now, moving on to the IWC. It's really important on the IWC to note that this is the Big Pilot. There are several different versions of the Pilot series from IWC. We happen to have quite a few of them. I did not get the smaller of the reference series. I wanted to focus on the Big Pilot because this is the one that garners the most attention. This is a big watch, and it looks bigger on your wrist simply because the dial is pushed out closer to the outside edges of the case. That's important to note because, as I said before, when you look at the Breitling piece, and it's a 46 millimeter at the same time, the IWC visually appears larger than the Breitling, even though it's not. So, not something you can swim in, something you can swim in. One of the other things about IWC that you should note, the reason that they're so popular with pilots, especially open cockpit pilots, the pressurization changes and rapid altitude changes can cause crystals to actually pop up out of their case. So IWC uniquely seats these crystals within the case to keep them from moving outside the case, from popping out, from cracking, from breaking, and they're made to withstand a lot of heavy different temperature changes. They also happen to have the hairspring guarded by an iron case to keep them from being magnetized and keep them from having to have problems telling time. If you want to definitely know what time it is, this is the watch to have. This is a throwback to the pocket watch because it is as large, visibly legible, and it does have a power supply on the side to let you know. It's got a 7-day power reserve to let you know when you might need to wind the watch if you happen to set it down and come back to it a week later. Because this is probably not a watch that you want to wear absolutely every day. You probably have something smaller in your series, like maybe a GMT or even a Santos Dumont for work. The Sky-Dweller is a little bit larger piece as well. Do keep in mind it's a little bit heavier, but it is extraordinarily popular, and we do have it here. So if you want to know more about Pilot's watches, definitely come see us. And be sure to stand out and say hi to those guys that are flying over the country for our frontline workers, our healthcare workers, our emergency service workers, the Thunderbirds, and the Blue Angels from the Navy. Fresh from the showcase, Swiss Watch Expo. Visit us at SwissWatchExpo.com.